Hello, and welcome to Communicate to Lead, the podcast that empowers leaders and aspiring leaders to communicate with clarity and impact. I'm Kele Belton, CEO and successful entrepreneur, and your host for today. I'm here to equip you with all the essential tools and strategies to master effective communication and lead your team to success. As the founder and CEO of The Tailored Approach, my goal is to empower you to be the best leader you can be. So sit back, relax, and join me in today's episode as we dive into the art of communicating like a true leader. Picture this. It's 9 p.m. on a Tuesday evening, and you're still at your desk, or maybe you've moved to your kitchen table, working on a project that's consuming your evening. Your mind is racing with thoughts like, it would take longer to explain than to do it myself. Or I'll probably have to redo it anyway if I give it to someone else, so I might as well do it right the first time. Sound familiar? If you have ever found yourself drowning in tasks that you could have delegated, you're not alone. Today, we're discussing why delegation feels so challenging for women leaders, and more importantly, what you can do about it. Welcome back to Communicate to Lead. I'm your host, Kele Belton, communication and leadership facilitator, coach, and speaker. In today's episode, we are tackling one of the biggest roadblocks I see among women leaders I work with, the struggle to delegate effectively. We will explore the unique challenges women face when it comes to letting go of control, unpack the real reason behind these struggles, and walk through a practical framework you can start using immediately. By the end of our time together, you will have a clear understanding of why delegation feels so difficult and get a step-by-step approach to transform how you think about and practice delegation. Let's start by acknowledging something important. Delegation isn't about being lazy or passing the buck. It's about strategic leadership. Yet, when I ask women leaders about their biggest challenges, delegation consistently shows up in the top 5 struggles. Think of delegation like teaching someone to drive. Initially, it feels safer to stay in the driver's seat. You know the route, you trust your reflexes, and you can control the outcome. However, if you never let anyone else drive, you'll always be the one behind the wheel, and your passengers will never learn to navigate on their own. My observations with clients align with what researchers have discovered about women in leadership. Studies consistently show that women leaders take on a disproportionate amount of what researchers call invisible work, supporting employee well-being, managing relationships, handling diversity initiatives, and smoothing over conflicts. This work benefits organizations significantly, but often goes unrecognized and unrewarded. Much of this additional workload stems from difficulty delegating in the complex web of expectations, socialization, and workplace dynamics that women navigate. Here's what I observe in my work with female leaders. You are often caught between being seen as too controlling if you provide detailed guidance, or not supportive enough if you delegate without sufficient context. It's a narrow tightrope that doesn't exist for our male colleagues. The cost of not delegating goes beyond your personal overwhelm. When you hold onto tasks that others could handle, you are actually robbing your team members of growth opportunities. Think about it this way. Every time you say, I'll handle this myself, you are also saying to your team, I don't believe you can learn to do this well. Yes, delegation often means investing time up front to guide and coach a team member through a new task. You need to explain your thought process, answer questions, and provide feedback along the way. But here's what happens next. Once they have mastered the skill, they can handle it confidently going forward. And often they bring fresh perspectives you never considered. Delegation creates a win-win situation. It frees you up to focus on strategic work while at the same time creating capability in others. When you delegate effectively, you are building a stronger, more versatile team. You are developing people who can think strategically, solve problems independently, and take on increasing levels of responsibility. This creates a positive cycle where your team becomes more capable, which gives you more opportunities to delegate and which frees you up for higher level work. And here's something you may not realize as a woman leader. Making yourself indispensable can hinder your career advancement. When you are the only person who can handle certain critical tasks, your organization becomes dependent on you remaining in your current position. Your leader might want to promote you, but they can't afford to move you up because you haven't prepared anyone else to step into your role. Think about it from your organization's perspective. If promoting you would create chaos because no one else can do what you do, they'll keep you right where you are, even if it means passing you over for opportunities you have earned. So the very thing you think is proving your value is actually limiting your potential. Now, let's dig into why delegation feels particularly challenging for women leaders. Understanding these underlying factors is crucial because you can't solve a problem you don't fully understand. The challenges I'm about to share aren't exhaustive, but they represent the most common barriers I see women leaders facing. First, there's the perfectionism trap. Look, this is one I am well familiar with because from early childhood, many women are rewarded for being helpful, accommodating, and getting things right. This conditioning creates an internal voice that whispers, if you want something done right, do it yourself. But perfectionism and delegation are completely at odds with each other. Think about perfectionism like trying to be the only person allowed to cook in your household because you are worried others won't season the food correctly or they won't follow your recipes exactly. It's exhausting, unsustainable, and ultimately keeps everyone else from developing their own cooking skills. I'm laughing at this because I know this so well firsthand. I'm still learning to walk away and let my husband cook meals his way, especially the meals that I tend to cook. And I'm also working on not micromanaging my daughter when she's helping in the kitchen. Effective delegation is more like teaching others your techniques and trusting them to create something successful in their own way. Secondly, there's the emotional labor component. Research shows that women often carry the invisible burden of managing relationships, anticipating needs, and smoothing over conflict. When you delegate, you might worry about how the person will feel, whether they'll think you don't care, or if you're adding stress to their already full plate. The emotional awareness, while it's valuable, can become a barrier when it prevents you from making necessary leadership decisions. You end up protecting others from growth opportunities because you are trying to shield them from discomfort. Thirdly, many women leaders face what I call the competence tax. You've worked hard to prove your expertise and earn your position. Delegation can feel like you're admitting you can't handle everything yourself, which triggers fears about being seen as less capable. Here's a reframe that I find particularly helpful. Delegation isn't a sign of weakness. It's a demonstration of advanced leadership skills. The most effective leaders aren't those who can do everything themselves. They are those who can multiply their impact through others, through their teams. Now that we understand the specific challenges women leaders face, let's build on that reframe and dive deeper into shifting your mindset about delegation. The stories you tell yourself about delegation directly impacts your ability to do it effectively. The first reframe is this: delegation is development, not dumping. When done right, delegation becomes one of the most powerful tools you have for growing your team's capabilities. You are not getting rid of work you don't want to do. You are strategically creating opportunities for others to stretch and grow. Consider delegation like being a salsa dancing instructor rather than the dancer. And this is something that I'm very familiar with. A salsa instructor doesn't do the dancing for their students. They demonstrate the basic steps, provide guidance and feedback, and create a safe space for students to practice and develop their own style. So what happens is your role shifts from doing to empowering others to do, which is actually a higher level of leadership. Another crucial reframe is moving from they can't do it as well as I can, to they can't do it as well as I can yet. That single word, yet, changes everything. It acknowledges current reality while opening the door to future possibility. Here's the truth about the it takes longer to explain than do it myself mindset. You are optimizing for the wrong time frame. Yes, initially, delegation requires an investment of time and energy. But you're not making this investment for today's task. You are making it for the hundreds of similar tasks that will come up in the future. Those several hours you spend teaching someone this week could save you hundreds of hours over the coming months, making your initial time investment incredibly small compared to the compound time savings you'll gain. With these mindset shifts in place, you're ready to put delegation into practice. I'm going to walk you through a framework I call the guide delegation method. This isn't about perfecting every detail, by the way. It's about creating a systematic approach that builds confidence for both you and your team member. Guide, as in the guide delegation method, stands for goal clarity, understand purpose, identify parameters, decide on communication, and evaluate and reflect. Let's walk through each step. The first step is goal clarity, the G in guide. Start with the end in mind. Instead of focusing on how the task should be done, get crystal clear on what success looks like. Paint a picture of the desired outcome that's specific enough to guide decision-making, but flexible enough to allow for different approaches. For example, instead of saying, update the client presentation, you might say, create a presentation that helps the client understand our 3 main recommendations and leaves them confident about moving forward with our proposal. Next, help them understand purpose. That's the U in guide. This is where you help your team member understand why this task is important or why it matters. Here are some questions to think about. How does it connect to larger goals? What impact will their work have? When people understand the why, they are more invested in the outcome and better equipped to make good decisions along the way. The third step is to identify parameters, the I in guide. This is where you set boundaries without, yes, listen to closely, without micromanaging. The following questions could be helpful. What's their decision-making authority? What resources do they have access to? What should they do if they encounter obstacles? Clear parameters create freedom within structure. Fourth, you'll decide on communication together. That's the D in guide. And notice I said together. This isn't about you dictating check-in schedules. Instead, it's about you and your team member deciding together how the communication will work. Maybe it's a brief check-in when they are halfway through, weekly touch bases for longer projects, or perhaps they'll reach out if they hit specific roadblocks. The key is to make this a mutual agreement rather than imposing your preferences as the leader, and to match the communication frequency to both the complexity of the task and the experience level. Finally, always evaluate and reflect. And this is the E in guide. After the task is completed, take time to review not the work itself, but the delegation process. Here's why this distinction matters. Reviewing the work can feel like judgment, but reviewing the process helps both of you learn and improve. Ask yourself things like, what went well in how you communicated expectations? Did they have the right resources? Was the timeline realistic? What would you do differently next time? This reflection builds capability for future delegations and strengthens trust between you and your team member. Now that you understand each step of the guide framework, let's see how this all comes together in practice. Let's say you need to delegate preparing a presentation for the board meeting. Instead of handing over your old slides, you might say, I'd like you to prepare the Q4 performance presentation for our board meeting. The goal is to clearly show our progress against annual targets and get board approval for our Q1 initiatives. This presentation directly influences our budget allocations for next year. You have access to all our performance data and can work with the design team if needed. If the data doesn't tell a clear story, or if you're unsure about the metrics, check in with me. Let's review your draft together next Friday. And after the board meeting, we'll discuss how the delegation process worked for next time. The guide framework gives you a solid foundation for delegation, but let's be realistic. Even with a clear process, you will probably encounter obstacles. Let me address the two most common ones I hear from women leaders. Here's obstacle one, the what if they fail? Here's the thing about failure in delegation. It's often a learning opportunity disguised as a setback. When you swoop in to prevent all possible failures, you are actually preventing growth. Instead, create conditions where small failures are safe and educational. This might mean starting with lower stakes tasks or building in review points where you can course correct together rather than taking over. The second obstacle is the I don't have time to delegate. This is delegation's ultimate paradox. You feel too busy to delegate, but delegation is exactly what would free up your time. So here goes. Start small. Choose one recurring task this week and apply the guide framework. The time you invest now will pay dividends later. Okay, here's what I want you to keep in mind. Delegation isn't a sign that you can't handle everything. It's about proving you can lead and develop others. The women leaders who thrive aren't those who have all the answers. They are the leaders who can build strong, capable teams. So here's your challenge for this week. Identify one task you are currently handling that someone else could do. Apply the guide framework and delegate it. Notice what thoughts, fears, or resistance come up for you. And remember, delegation is a skill that improves with practice. Thank you for spending your time with me today. If you're ready to get personalized support with your delegation skills and leadership challenges, I invite you to schedule a complimentary leadership clarity call with me. You can find the booking link in the show notes. Remember, your willingness to delegate isn't a sign of weakness. It's a demonstration of your commitment to build something bigger than what you can create alone. Until next Thursday, my friend, I am Kele, reminding you that great communication is the foundation of inspiring leadership. Keep learning, keep growing, and remember to communicate to lead.